would you say was your biggest break as an actor?
Oh, Deliverance, no doubt. Deliverance was my first film. Not only my first film, my first time in front of a camera. I mean, I was a total unknown actor in New York, and had never done any. I've been working on stage, and they came to New York looking for good unknown actors, and God knows I was unknown. I actually was the first actor they saw in New York. Not that I was at the top of anyone's list. I wasn't. I was so far at the bottom of the list that they were going to start seeing people at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. They asked me to come in at 9 o'clock because just to see if I was worth seeing. And I met with the casting director. He liked me, and he gave me a script and sent me away to a coffee shop. And then I met with John Boorman 3 or 4 times in New York, and eventually they flew me to California, and they tested me along with 17 they flew 18 of us to California, and out of that 18 people, I was the only one that they liked. And then I love this. They flew us all from New York to California to test. 4 weeks later, they flew 12 guys from L.A. to New York and tested them there. I don't know why they didn't test in New York, but that's movies for you. And then they found Ned in that second group. It's probably the first time in the history of film that they found the 2 guys below the title before they found the 2 guys above the title, because we waited around for a couple of months now for them to cast John and Bert.
Right.
In Deliverance, most people, we did all of that canoeing ourselves. There's not a stuntman in it any place. And one of the things that we discovered with there's no way anyone can help you in canoes, because if you have safety lines, if you have people downstream looking out for you, they're in the shop. They're just in the shop. And so it ends up, and I have to tell you the truth, that was another good reason why to shoot the film in sequence, because in the film the easy rapids are at the beginning, and they get harder and harder and harder as they go. So by the time we actually got to the really difficult rapids, we had been canoeing on the water. We'd been on the water, and all of us are fairly good athletes. We'd been on the water for 6 to 7 hours a day for 6, 7, 8 weeks, and we had an expert canoe instructor there with us, who half the battle of whitewater is the concept of reading the river, and the whole time you're going, a river changes, and the whole thing is to read the river as you go. So what we would do, we had this expert canoeist, and he would line up the camera shots. He would get in the canoe and line up the camera shots, and he would go down, and then we would sit and watch him intently, the line that he picked to go down through. And oftentimes he would make a mistake. He would say, when we come back, and he'd say, "You remember when I went there? Don't do that. Do this, do this." And now, as a rule of thumb, John Voight and I wrecked about 60% of the time. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the water. I don't know if you remember the film, if you've seen it recently, but at the end of the film, there's a canoe that's broken in half there. Yeah. They didn't have to do that. We did that.
I mean, how prescient do you think Robocop was with sort of certain technology?
You know, in some ways, it was kind of scary that Paul Verhoeven and those, because to tell you the truth, at the expense of offending some people, the actual script was kind of cartoonish, and for my money, the person that really made that film work was Paul Verhoeven, because he made us care about. Thank you. He made us care about that RoboCop. A lot of the things about there were just cartoonish aspects of that film that by touching us in the way he did, I think put the film on a much deeper level. And we were talking earlier, his whole idea was to make the violence just so over the top that it was cartoonish, and oddly enough, the censors kept cutting back, and they actually made the violence more real than because Paul wanted to be like one of those things where I used to be in college, and they'd have a college rodeo, and a lot of the guys from the East would come and get drunk and get on the bull, and the whole idea was to get on the bull and get bucked off immediately. But then they'd done it. They lived and they'd done it, and now they could enjoy the rest of the rodeo. I think that's what Paul wanted to do with the violence. I think he wanted us to see that violence. And then we all say, oh, I get it, it's a joke. But by the censors cutting back and cutting back and cutting back, it took us a lot longer to get that joke.
Apart from being a successful actor, we've found out that you're also a musician. Could you tell us a little bit about your music career? What instrument you play, what style of music you do?
Yeah, most people don't realize this, but I started out, I was struggling as a musician and as an actor when I was calling square dances when I was 10 years old. And I put myself through college with a rock and roll and a blues band. And I was actually cutting records when I was in high school. Most people don't realize it, but where I came from in Portales, New Mexico, a little town in Portales, but 19 miles north of me was Clovis, New Mexico. And during the 50s and the 60s, Clovis, New Mexico was a hotbed of recording. I was actually at the recording session when Buddy Holly cut Peggy Sue. So I've been playing. I got Deliverance because, pun intended, it was instrumental that I could play, that I got the role in Deliverance. And so I've been a player my whole life. And now I get such joy out of the music. I've just released my 7th album, and I'll brag a little bit. My album just went to #1 in the States. And, now let's clarify this. #1 on the folk music stations. Now you got to realize the real stations are like this. The folk stations are like this. There's only about 6 of them. No, it's mainly the college stations and NPR and things like that. But the album is now #9 in Europe. As much as I love acting, it's not as fulfilling as the music. Just because I can reach people more. I can't go through a camera. I can't reach out and make eye contact with you with acting because there's a lens there. And even in plays I can't do that. And what I can do with the music is somehow make that connection.